Good morning everyone, hope everyone's doing well, and yes, for once, not in my coat. Call this video preparation of what's to come on the first week of July, because I am going to be talking about two companies and a recruitment agency that I will be naming and shaming. I have decided I am going to show no more mercy to any of these establishments. There is some context though as far as the recruitment agency is concerned, and that is I am probably mostly responsible for that one because I actually went out of my way to signpost them. But nonetheless, it doesn't change the fact of what I'm going to say, which will cover this later on. So I want to talk first and foremost about Stadler Rail. We're going in chronological order. So these guys, there was nothing in the world that could have prepared me for someone actually looking up my social media and actually finding out who I was. Like, no amount of secrecy was going to keep me from being found out on YouTube. And I'm trying to remember the girl's name who actually did it. I think it was Shanice, but basically I was just working one usual work day. And I want you to bear in mind that there was various shifts that I had to cover for this. But one day, all of a sudden, I ended up having Shanice come up to me and mention my YouTube channel, which I thought, shit, well, I guess there's no point keeping that secret, is there? Now, at first, there was nothing harmful to come of it. But later down the line, she ended up pulling me to one side, having a word, and basically mentioning about Tommy Robinson, mentioning how he was a racist and how you would want to be aligned with someone who is racist. And obviously, we all know that Tommy has no racist bone in his body, and frankly, nor do I. But you have to bear in mind, back then, I didn't have as much confidence as I do today. But I digress. They mentioned this stuff. They ended up discussing about, oh, why don't you see that some of your views could be conceived as racist and blah blah blah, when all I had basically been doing at the time is echoing what Tommy Robinson had basically been saying about Islam, all their rape gangs and what have you. So nothing untoward, nothing racist, but you know how lefties are. They will find any excuse to try and get rid of you, or try to discredit you, or try to label you and all that shit. So that's basically what happened with that. So, and what was sad was later down the line, I had my hopes gotten up that I would be given a permanent position, that I would basically be kept on, because there was another woman up there who may not have been as competent at the job, but I started to realise what was going on, because there was a little bit of bullying going on in that workplace. Shanice and other people would often bully this other woman, Yvonne, who basically, well, turned out she was as sweet as could be, but they kept on making shit up about her that it was just unbelievable. They were finding any which excuse to take a jab at her. And it is absolutely disgusting to think that I was also a part of that for a period of time. But once I realised what Yvonne was more than anything, and that she wasn't this dumbass or what have you, I felt disgusted. I actually feel ashamed that I ended up falling for that shit. So if on the off chance Yvonne is watching this, I'm sorry for meeting you. Because you didn't deserve half of that shit. Never did. And I wish her all the best. But then we come up to the lead up, which effectively is, we come to the end of the 3-month trial. We end up basically parting ways. I start my first week into this contract. Well, they extended my contract, it wasn't permanent, I should have clarified that, sorry, but basically there was an extension to my contract. First week, I get brought up by one of the managers, we're letting you go. I'm just like, what's going on? And then they said, why? And I was not happy. I was not even remotely happy, because I had basically been sold downriver as well. It seems to me like Stadler Rail, they decided that I was no more use to them, and they wanted to use the excuse that I supported Tommy Robinson, that I got dismissed. Now the funny thing is, the very, very funny thing is, Tommy Robinson, when I was in Salford, had actually said I was having problems at home and problems at work. Well, I wasn't having problems at work at the time, because really, they really thought nothing of it. It's almost like he predicted the future, and I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of like, Jesus Christ, did he know this was gonna happen? Anyway, the fact is, they then got rid of me, and obviously what Tommy said about problems at work really did come true. Maybe I should get him to pick my next lottery numbers. Anyway, they ended up getting rid of me from Stadler Rail, and I was left without a job again. And I think I ended up being out of work for, I'd probably say at least a year, or at bare minimum close to it. I can't remember everything on my CV off the top of my head after all. So that's one company name and shamed, because as I said, I'm not fucking around anymore. I've got no more mercy to give. Back in the day, I used to have so much mercy, but now, fuck 'em. And I'm not going to hesitate to do what I'm doing now. If I get crossed by anyone, if I feel like a company has gone out of their way to discriminate against me for my political views, I'm going to be all over them, just like that. Because at the end of the day, the only political views that should ever see anybody dismissed is you're inciting violence or you're inciting terrorism. That's it. If it isn't that, if you're not encouraging people to go and commit crime, go and commit acts of violence or commit acts of terrorism, people should not be dismissed for their political views. So now we come over to the second company, and the recruitment company, that decided to do the same thing. A little charity known as Ormston Families. Now these people were lovely people to me at first. No problems. I didn't mention anything as far as politics is concerned around the workplace. There was one time I mentioned about COVID, but that's about it. But other than that, I didn't really mention anything. Now bear this in mind, because it'll be important for why I got dismissed. So I'm doing my work as administrator, and the job was very simple. It was just a matter of, I go in and I basically copy details of sensitive information, copy it from blank copies, I copy it from physical bits of paper and put it on a blank spreadsheet. I'm basically transferring data, and then I'm disposing of the physical paper. Nothing difficult, nothing extravagant, and I was able to do that pretty well. Did my job flawlessly, I would say. Mind you, it would be a stretch to say it was really hard work and all that shit. It really wasn't. It was fairly easy work to do. And at the time I was also doing my videos as I was walking around my city centre. I was doing my videos regarding Tommy Robinson, the lamestream media, the COVID scamdemic, etc, etc. Now, it turns out that one day I came in, all of a sudden, every single person in this one room was brought into a different room. They were brought into a different room away from me, and I was put in with two of the managers, one of them named Alice. And basically what ended up happening was they brought me in, and I put up a bit more of a fight this time as far as Tommy Robinson is concerned, because they brought him up, not the COVID thing. They brought Tommy Robinson up, and they said, well, he's openly racist, and he's he's a violent criminal, blah, blah, blah. They were basically doing the same cock and ball story about Tommy Robinson, giving me this spiel about, oh, well, Tommy's this horrible, nasty racist. And I actually, despite the fact I was actually watering up again, tearing up, because I was losing another job, and I was getting sick of it. But I told them, show me where he's been racist. Show me where he's actually been doing that. But they wouldn't hear it. It all went in one ear and out the other with them. And ultimately, I ended up fired from that job too. Now, where it gets really interesting is they brought up the recruitment agency in question that got me this job in the first place, Recruitment. And I had a long discussion with them over at their offices, because I was a bit of a wreck at the time. But after I stopped the Niagara Falls and what have you, I ended up having this discussion with one of the consultants up there, one of the people who actually got me that job in the first place. And they were saying they would have to, that they were only aware of what I was supporting, and they didn't actually bring it up. To their credit, I will say that much about them. They did say that they wouldn't bring up the Tommy Robinson thing with them. They didn't bring it up to them at all. However, remember what I mentioned at the start of this video, or near the start of this video, of how I said that basically there was some context about me signposting them. While I will say I shouldn't have done it, I will accept that. I was nearly certain at the time that it would be largely irrelevant anyway, because I could deduce from the language that was being used in the meeting that the managers were going to know about this anyway. And basically, the managers, I am like 99.99% certain, they would have ended up basically denying me any access to them. Because what happened afterwards was, of course, after I had my chat with Reed, I made that video basically discussing current company and a certain recruitment company that loves Mondays. I knew full well that that was going to absolutely seal the deal as far as them getting rid of me is concerned. But I knew full well they were going to do that anyway. That's the thing. I knew full well those people were going to basically side against me, because obviously it's Tommy Robinson and we know how much the lefties dislike him. So it stands to reason why I would go ahead and do what I did in the first place, because I knew deep down that whether I signposted Reed or not, they would have ended up doing what they did anyway. It's as simple as that. But there are just some people that are just, when you are exposed to it enough, the cancel culture and what have you, you get to understand the types of people you're coming across, quite frankly. Thank you. I hope this is going to set a precursor to what to expect as far as the video that I'm going to be putting out the first week of July is concerned. We've already been past June. What am I on about? Like, the way to look at it is this. I never went out of my way to actively talk to my work colleagues, and I still don't to this day with the company I worked for, who, I will say this much, my views are purely my own. They don't reflect anyone within the company. But I'll say this much. I have never talked about my politics in that place, aside from one time, which they actually brought it up first, which was the war revolving around Vladimir Putin. So I discussed my points and basically said I still think he's an evil man, but I don't think that he just went out of his way to invade Ukraine. I think that he basically ended up being provoked into it. backed into a corner. He was effectively forced into that decision, quite frankly. And the way I look at it is I would never go out of my way to preach my politics. I would never go out of my way to mention what I do or who I do it to, as far as my politics is concerned, to anyone. Because at the end of the day, I'd like to think I've got a good healthy dose of that seemingly uncommon resource now, known as common sense. But I guess the bottom line is this. Companies are ruthless. Companies can be truly, truly wicked in what they do. Such as Ormston families. Such as Stadler Rail. Who, I actually never mentioned Stadler Rail, what I did basically for them. I was basically working with them. They work with the Greater Anglia trains. They basically make sure the trains keep running in Greater Anglia. This is the Two-Tier Policing Society. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that one. Anyway, basically they would work with Greater Anglia trains, and for every day that they weren't back on the tracks within their allotted time, basically it would cost the company thousands. But I was responsible for getting the paperwork ready for them, making sure the examinations were there, ensuring that the trains would be back and ready for service in decent time. But the one thing I want you to notice is that with all of these jobs that I have had, is they have had no problems with the work I've done. I was doing my duty, doing my job, and doing it well. These decisions to get rid of me were purely politically motivated. They were not motivated by my work ethic. They were not motivated by my inability to do the job. They were not motivated by me wanting to slack off or whatever. No, it was all political. The only things that I regret as far as this pair of stories that I've mentioned today, the first and foremost is that I didn't do it sooner, and the second was I put up that video signposting rather than actually exposing Reed Recruitment. But understandably, I can no longer use their website. I can no longer use Reed to help me search for a job. Though at this moment in time, I don't need them to, because I'm in one and hope to be for quite a few years to maintain my income, because I need to at this point. I think it must have been like, oh, how long was it? I think it was at least a year before I got a new job when Ormston families got rid of me. Like, when you lose a job, it hurts. It really fucking hurts. Especially when you get yourself into a situation where you've made poor life choices in the past and you end up in a situation where you've now got to find a way to get into another job, get your income before shit goes south. And I hope this is going to put to bed once and for all any notion of me being a grifter, because I can tell you right now that supporting Tommy Robertson, as far as making money is concerned, has been a complete net negative. It's a bit, I do sympathise a little bit with Paul Thorpe when he was being called a grifter, when he was making his money selling watches. I do sympathise with him to that extent, because at the end of the day, if he's been supporting Tommy Robertson, it's like he said and I've said here, you don't gain money from supporting Tommy Robertson. Maybe in my case, maybe a trip to Manchester and a fucking hotel room, but that's about it. And even then, that was only because they were willing to do that, because I was originally not planning to go to Salford. But the point is, anybody who thinks I'm a grifter at this point, I want you to let those two jobs sit in your minds and let them be a reminder of what I've lost because of my political views. I'm no longer afraid to name and shame the companies who are responsible for putting me in a rut, who are responsible for treating me like a disposable razor. Because I'll tell you now, those who try to dispose of me with improper conduct are going to find themselves getting cut far worse than they could imagine.